The football the Oakland Raiders produced in the 2018 season was a disaster of mediocrity, indefensibly slow play, and a rotation of ill-equipped players at the game's most fundamental position. Much of the blame in the 2018 season fell on the offense. While this remains a correct criticism of Greg Olson's offense, no, this one, not this one. The cited claims and excuses given were often wrong. A large proportion of the blame was handed out to the skill position guys, and while the receivers didn't set the world on fire, Jordy Nelson and Seth Roberts played as decent wide receiver threes. They were open much more than the national media would have you believe. Amari Cooper took perhaps the brunt of the blame with this deep post route he gave up going viral on Twitter last year. Whilst this play is inexcusable, let me try to excuse it. Before his trade 6 weeks into the season, Cooper was playing at an extremely high level despite what his limited stats may show. The tape showed someone consistently gaining position on his man and regularly coming open on intermediate routes. But with lack of targets, 5.1 a game, and a missed opportunity due to errant quarterback play, he came over as a mediocre player who didn't want to fight hard. Whilst pulling up on a route is inexcusable, the frequency of targets or complete lack thereof clearly messed with his rhythm in Oakland. He showed no lack of effort in his time with Dallas. Some of these non-targets aren't Carr's fault either, and this is where we come to the fundamental problem of Oakland in 2018, their offensive line. The Raiders' offensive line was a qualifier for the worst position group in the NFL last season, and I don't think the bad stats just do it justice, but here's just a few. They gave up 52 sacks last season, finishing tied for 29th in the league. Carr was hit 89 times last year per NFL.com, with his average time to throw just 2.55 seconds. The O-line ranked 25th in Football Outsiders' adjusted sack percentage, a metric that adds together sacks, intentional groundings, and aggregates for down distance. The line went through 13 different players, with 9 different men starting. Only left tackle Colton Miller and center Rodney Hudson started all 16, and frankly, the Raiders would have been better if they didn't. Rookie first-round pick Colton Miller had a brutal first season in pro football, regularly being abused by opposition DNs. There were moments this season, particularly in the San Francisco and the Cleveland game, where Miller's poor play was single-handedly stalling Oakland's offense. He showed an inability to keep up with the speed of the NFL, regularly slow in the kick slide. At 6'8", he struggles to keep his hips low and was routinely pushed off his spot. His performance in the run game may have been even worse, often getting confused as to the actual play being ran. Like this example in the Miami game. Here, you can see the whole line set up for an outside zone left, but Miller crashes down and the play is dead. He offered little resistance on reach blocks, and even when he made good position, was frequently bulldozed. Miller showed some athleticism when he was used to pull on wide tosses, but this was his only redeeming quality last season. It's hard to project anything else but Miller being a disaster again this coming season. The Raiders continue to tell us that he'll be their left tackle, and new addition Trent Brown, who came over from the Patriots, will play the right side, but it seems only a matter of time before the newly paid man is protecting Carr's blind side. Moving to the interior line, we have the trio of Kelechi Osemele, Rodney Hudson, and Gabe Jackson. Osemele, once one of the league's premier guards with a strong reputation, was incredibly poor last season. His speed seemed to have completely vanished, showing an inability to be a factor in the Raiders' favored zone run scheme, or when trying to get to the second level on chip blocks. He was just as poor in pass protection, with speed really showing up when teams moved ends inside or ran any sort of stunts. Osemele missed 5 games last season, and there was a good chance he was trying to play through something, but his play was poor and his replacements during the time weren't any better. Utility lineman Jon Feliciano filled in for 4 games with somehow worse play, and Chaz Green, the man who gained notoriety for his 6-sack game in Dallas, started the other. Yeah. With Osemele now on the Jets, Jonathan Cooper, a man who is on his 7th roster in 6 years, has been brought in to compete for the left guard spot against Richie Incognito, an erratic meathead who was out of football last season but seemingly loved by Gruden. Center Rodney Hudson was the only other lineman to start 16 games for the Raiders, and was bad throughout the season, with the only good part of his game being a consistent snap. Here he is just getting abused in the run game, a regular sight in 2018. Gabe Jackson was probably Oakland's best lineman last year, and even played at a below average level. Jackson hurt his MCL in a training camp joint practice and will miss the first 4 weeks of the season. The right tackle was the other disaster position on the line. Veteran Donald Penn started the season. Penn's play was rough in his first 4 starts, missing time in games 3 and 4 before being placed on IR. He was replaced by TJ Clemmings in the Miami game, but he was a disaster, repeatedly getting both his running back and quarterback killed. I mean, seriously, look at this play against the Dolphins. Before Lynch is even taking the handoff, there's another player in the backfield, and this continued to happen throughout the game. The following week, rookie Brandon Parker was brought in. He solidified the position, and as much as he managed to start the final 12 games, playing the role of a human turnstile. He finished the season with a team-high 10 penalties. 10 penalties was a fact good enough for 14th in the league last year. A quick diversion. The running backs for Oakland played decently last season, despite the horrendous offensive play. Both Lynch and Doug Martin averaged 4.2 yards per carry, despite multiple plays in which they faced a defender 3 yards deep in the backfield. Lynch looked more than capable of leading rushing attack in 2018, but was sidelined with an injury in Week 6. It wouldn't be a shock to see him on a roster in 2019, providing he wants to play. Muscle Hamster remained a solid runner despite the line. He lacks home run hitting speed, but ran hard in 2019 and is certainly a capable backup. And a quick shout out to DeAndre Washington, who is nothing but a positive in limited snaps. The backs were running behind a line that was 31st in power success rate in 2018, a metric that measures success on short runs on 3rd or 4th down, including all goal line carries. It is easy to see why the Oakland Raiders underperformed when their line struggled most in key situations. This is really what the line is there for, the extra yard for the first, the last 6 inches for a touchdown. Subsequently, they tied 29th in the league for rushing touchdowns with just 9. So on to 2019, and it's hard to project anything but misery for the offensive line. While they may bring in Trent Brown to solidify in one position, they returned 2 bad starters in Colton Miller and Rodney Hudson. Hopefully, for Derek Carr's sake, Miller can grow into a starting left tackle, and Hudson and Jackson bounce back. But there's just too many holes for this to go anything but badly. Carr's a guy we haven't spoken much about yet, and truthfully, it's been very difficult to evaluate someone playing behind such a bad offensive line. How much can you blame a guy for seeing ghosts or checking down the ball when his O-line is consistently giving him less than 2.2 seconds to throw a ball? Oh, and the ghosts were real. His 2018 season play should take some criticism though. He threw 8 out of 10 interceptions in the first 5 weeks, with week 1 being particularly egregious, throwing 3 picks against the eventual Super Bowl runner-up Rams, in a game Oakland should have won, outplaying them through the first half. Week 2 looks like an improvement on the stat sheet, but this is really where stats can lie to you. Going 29 of 32 and a passer rating of 114.6, Carr was average in this game, often passing underneath when a shot was available, and the Raiders finished the day just 3 of 11 on 3rd and 4th downs. This game, passer rating, and how stats in football can lie will be a topic of an upcoming video, so be on the lookout for that. His struggles came early and often last season, not having a strong performance until the Cleveland game in week 4. In this game, he had 1 bad pick, but consistently moved the ball and had this brilliant dime while standing strong in the pocket and receiving the hit. This was followed by no show against the Chargers and a frankly embarrassing outing in London where they lost Lynch for the season, and Cooper went down early, a snap that ended up his last snap before his trade to Dallas. This game, Carr managed to throw for just 4.5 yards an attempt, ranking the 5th percentile in all games with over 20 attempts last season, and the 4th worst yards attempt by any QB at Wembley. Here's a chart of the location of all Carr's throws that day. Yikes. Carr bounced back with maybe his best performance of the season in a losing effort against the Colts. Carr played exceptionally, dueling and outplaying Andrew Luck. The Raiders remained ahead going into the 4th, but with the scores tied with just 10 minutes left, they'd go on a quick 3 and out, giving a short field and a touchdown. No worries though, Derek Carr has been good all day. Just hand off to start the drive, and Doug Martin fumbles. This game would appear a blowout, but was much closer than the scoreboard shows. Coincidentally, Carr was kept clean this game, and the only game of the season there were no sacks registered against him. From here, the line gets really poor. Over the last 9 weeks, Carr was sacked at least 3 times 8 out of the 9 weeks, including his 7-sack game against San Francisco. Really, it's hard to blame a guy who can't even get onto his last step of his drop back before he faces pressure. Over the last 9 games, Carr was sacked 34 times. Those are David Carr numbers. No, seriously, David Carr was only ever sacked 33 times over the last 9 games. It did, however, happen to him twice. Poor David. He had some good games in the streak, noticeably Kansas City at home and the Steelers win, but sprinkled in were poor performances, such as Week 15 against Cincinnati, where he was timid in throwing deep, or the Arizona game, which he needed a final minute drive to be a team coached by Steve Wilkes. So Carr's play over 2018-2019 was erratic with some good play, all completely overshadowed by Gross' inability to protect him. He's still a guy who's capable of all throws, willing to throw a pretty floated ball one-on-one, and he thinks he has a mismatch. But he hasn't shown the knack of making average players good and good players great. He gives you very little in terms of improvisation, unable to create something from nothing like upper echelon QBs in the league. And while he remains above average in touch throws, he's below average in arm strength. Is the coaching some to blame? Well, the O-line coach was and still is for the upcoming season Tom Cable, a man with notoriously poor record at the pro level, and previously good players did underperform for this year. Expect Cable to be placed under a large amount of scrutiny this year. Gruden and Olsen were poor at designing wide-open stuff in the red zone last season, ranking 27th in points per red zone drive and 23rd in touchdowns per red zone drive. Gruden, however, does not seem to be behind the times like some people have suggested. Over the season, the scripted series to start the game outgained their average drives 37.4 yards to 30.8. He regularly dialed up some beauties during the season. I would, however, like to see less running on first down and more crossers. Always more crossers. With the introduction of the most statistically comprehensive receiver of the last 5 years, Mr. Big Chest should make any offense better. But he's such a knucklehead, he couldn't even make it to publishing day of this video, and was cut before we even saw him in silver and black. We didn't want to waste this beautiful graphic though. Losing last season's top target and strong third down catcher Jared Cook to the Saints will also be a bigger loss than people realize. They added Tyrell Williams, who can help stretch the field, and Josh Jacobs in the first round, although I believe this resource could have been better spent with larger glaring holes on the roster. The third problem that appeared on tape was the distinct lack of speed on defense. Any outside run last year bore positive results for the opposing team, a game plan that was quickly worked out last season and the front seven consistently worked through 2018. They showed no speed getting to the edge, giving up the big run after big run around the outside. The defensive line were weak in the run, providing little to no resistance, and were in fact even worse rushing the passer, but we'll come to that. The inability to defend off tackle and outside run cost the team multiple games. Unable to get the other team off the field, the Raiders were stuck giving up chunk yardage and first downs to teams who were willing to run. Tahir Whitehead was both slow off the blocks and slow across the ground last season, consistently getting beat on his outside shoulder. Nicholas Morrow was better sprinting to the sideline to cover the outside runs, but was bad in pass defense and slow in his reaction to the run. I looked for somebody to single out for criticism on the defensive line, but they seem to produce so little that it feels impossible to not just think of them as a homogenous group of mediocrity. Seriously, 13 sacks over the whole season. 13. The Raiders were led in sacks by rookie defensive tackle Maurice Hurst, who was okay. It's an even worse sign when guys 2 and 3 are somebody that didn't finish the full season with you, and a defensive back. They picked up Clyde Farrell with the 4th overall pick this year in a position desperate for talent, and Jonathan Abram later in the 1st, but this defense still feels too devoid of high caliber players. They drafted 4 of the defensive players this spring, but also added veteran linebacker Vontaze Burfict, who Gruden seems to love and is likely starting. He may be even slower than what already trotted out. This defense being a capable unit is still a few years away. Gruden and Mayock will both get ample time to see their vision. Improvement at every level is needed, and this journey will be tough for the Raiders over the next few years, with relocation to Las Vegas. The league is still better when the Raiders are in contention and full villain mode, but the autumn win might just be a few years off. That's all for this week. Thank you if you made it to the end, because we applaud you for this level of concentration. We'll be doing various long forms over the season, as well as keeping an eye on the league week to week. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow us on all the social medias.